Hello everyone, welcome to the Type 1 Enneagram video. I'm here with a couple of my Type 1 sisters, excited to ask them some questions, but I'd like to get started with giving you a little bit of an introduction as to what a Type 1 entails. So, a Type 1 is called a perfectionist or the reformer, and I prefer reformer a little bit because I think perfectionist can be a little bit misleading. There are lots of types that could be considered a perfectionist, but you really have to get down to the why. Why are you feeling like you have those perfectionist tendencies? If it has to do with you trying to gain somebody else's favor, that probably means that type 1 is not your main type. However, if you feel like really doing it right is the only option, then you are probably a type 1. Type 1s are a part of the anger, gut, or doing triad. Anger triad meaning each of those types interpret their anger in a different way. Type 1s are sometimes called resentment. They have a little bit of resentment towards the world because they don't understand why other people wouldn't do it just right. Lastly, when the type 1s are in stress, they move towards the unhealthy aspects of the type 4, which means that they can become emotional, they can kind of criticize quite a bit, and they can become a slave to their inner critic. But when they are healthy, they take on some of the aspects of the positive aspects of a type 7. So they can become spontaneous, they can be a ton of fun, and they can see the world for how it could be and all of the good that is in it. So with that introduction done, I'm gonna start chatting with my type 1. So let's just get right into it. I would love to hear from a few of you on what's your favorite part about being a type 1.
I have heard that a type 1 is also described as a champion of good. So I kind of like that.
The reformer because I really am driven to try to make a positive impact on the things that I am a part of, and I guess in that sense I want to follow all the rules, so I think that's probably my favorite thing.
We have an inherent sense of morality and justice, and not rules, but how things should be, could be, that kind of thing. And there's sort of a dreamer aspect to that too.
So on the flip side of that coin, what are some frustrations or kind of pinch points that you have found with being a type 1?
I'm very nitpicky about how I want things to be done, and when people don't aren't, either they're not able to do it up to my expectations or even the exact same way that I want it to do, sometimes I have a really hard time dealing with that.
But also being stubborn and just not wanting to give can sometimes be a hinge point or roadblock of a 1.
I used to struggle a lot with being too judgmental, and I say too because I'm still judgmental and it still can get in my way at times, but there's a healthier way of going about that judgmental tendency, but it's gotten me stuck in the past.
What part of your type description, or at what point did you kind of realize yeah, I'm definitely a type 1?
The basic desire of each type is what got me. And so with type 1s wanting to be morally right, you are worthy of love because you are good kind of thinking.
Once I saw more of the reformer side of it, and I guess I really liked what you said about champions of good. When I saw that kind of aspect of it, that's when I really felt more connected to it, and I kind of saw the purpose, you know what I'm saying, understood it more, the purpose behind trying to be a perfectionist. And
it really solidified it for me when I saw the weaknesses, and I was like, yep, that's me. When one specifically I read, I can't remember which description, but it said does not like to be interrupted or looked down upon or criticized. And I know that I tend to, like we've talked about, be overcritical anyways. But when I hear it from someone else, it's almost 10 times worse.
Just something that I have heard about type 1s that you may have been told before is that you come off as being emotionless, but I think that that's kind of unfair. I don't know if any of you have an opinion on that, but I would love to hear it.
I think I've noticed mine the most. My oldest child is 10. I have a 6, 8, and 10-year-old. And I think I've noticed it the most through parenting, that when there's a situation where maybe I could have responded to my child in love or responded to them in grace, instead I'm thinking of the doing and what do I need to do to fix the situation, instead of maybe that can wait and I can respond to them.
Where I've noticed it in my life is that when I'm really struggling with something or I'm very overloaded, I can shut down the emotional side of me. Even though I don't think anyone in my life would call me emotionless, it's definitely something I do, maybe just somehow well hidden.
Actually, Pooja, I think that's so interesting that you say that you have never been considered emotionless, because you do have that two wing. And so I'd love to hear from both Nicole and Pooja kind of how your two wing impacts that, because I think that sometimes those can kind of be at odds.
Yeah, I would say I have a very big two wing. I actually mistyped as a two last year, which is why I didn't get into the Enneagram at first, because I read it and I was like, that sounds like me, kind of. It sounds like someone else's assessment of me is what it looks like. And then through some emotional growth work, I have some personal growth that I've been doing this year. I retook it and got one and read it, and I was like, oh, that's me. Other people's emotions they weigh very heavily on me, and that does probably inform my sense of like what's right and wrong. Is that hurting people, and how are people feeling about that? That probably influences it a lot.
What makes me want to do like good and follow the rules is because I want to make sure that I'm being fair to everybody like that I encounter. I wanted to make sure that like I didn't do anything that would hurt somebody else because I messed up.
And then Daina, if you want to talk a little bit more about your wing, I would love to hear it.
Sure. Like a good type 1, I made notes. Anyone else? But I want to go and do all the time. So just learning that it's okay to stop. It's okay if I don't have everything crossed off. I still did a good job today.
As far as all of your jobs or the jobs that you're planning on doing, I would love to hear how you think the type 1 kind of has influenced your choice in that.
So I'm in architecture, and I noticed that people without very much money weren't getting the nice architecture. Like they were just getting these. I worked for a nonprofit in high school, and they were working out of a portable in the back of a school. And I was like, what if they had a space that really did everything they needed it to do? How much more good could they do in the world?
So I supervise over 100 employees. So I get the to-do part where I have, lots of those little detailed type things that have to be done well. Then I get the service piece as well. So I can totally see my Enneagram type and even my wing within the area that I work.
I'm VPM right now for my chapter, so like I love planning. Like I have 50 lists on my phone right now, and I completely relate when you say that you write stuff down just to mark off that you did it, because that's my life. But so I really want to do like event planning or something kind of like that. I just really like planning things and like having like a set like schedule.
I have to say something. It's just so interesting to me that all three of us, I don't know if like the server or some version of the server is a nickname for ones, because I feel like all of us are trying to be in a profession where we are serving other people, where we are serving.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to the champions of good thing that Daina had said, where you all have your sense of right and wrong and you have very high integrity. And so those things definitely move towards helping others. And like that, what can get better than that, right? Like that's such a wonderful tendency to have. So I suppose, what's one of the main areas of growth or things that you've really acknowledged that you need to work on because of the Enneagram?
Just because like I think something is right, there's a lot of gray areas in life, and not everyone's always going to see things the exact same way I do, because things aren't black and white all the time, and there's not always right and wrong.
I think it's Suzanne Stabile is how it's pronounced. She's a huge Enneagram coach, and I was listening to her audio from a presentation, and she was saying that she feels like it's a deal breaker she's like, not all types have a deal breaker, but type 1s, if you don't have that little voice in your head, then you're not a type 1. And I was like, I feel like that has to be true, because that voice is mean. And I didn't know that not everybody else's voice was that mean. And sort of what you're saying, Nicole, with the black and white thinking, I've gotten pretty good at thinking in the gray for like the world at large. But then when it comes to me, I get very black and white. this is good Pooja, this is bad Pooja, you know, you're being a good girlfriend, you're being a bad girlfriend, like just black and white on everything on how I'm being as a person. It actually has helped a lot with that growth of, oh, I don't have to keep feeding that inner critic.
It's okay to say no, and I'm not good at it, and I am not good at asking for help. But those things would be the areas that I have acknowledged that I need to work on the most: to say no, to ask for help, and to rest and recharge.
If you don't mind me asking, where do you think that pressure to not say no comes from?
As a one, I would never ask somebody to do something if I didn't think they would be the best for that job, if I didn't think they would be good at it. So then I think that person's asking me because they need me to do it. It probably wasn't that deep. They probably were just asking because I was there and I attended the meeting.
So if you all have heard the songs, there's an artist called Sleeping at Last who made a song for each of the Enneagram types. But I thought that this particular, I guess, stanza was pretty impactful. It says, "Now I have learned my lesson. The price of this so-called perfection is everything. I've spent my whole life searching desperately to find out that grace requires nothing of me." I would just love to hear your opinions, if you agree with that, if you don't.
Motherhood is humbling, y'all. I mean, it is humbling. But I am learning, maybe slowly, very slowly some days, to give myself and others grace. Just giving grace. I actually wrote just a saying that I like: grace upon grace, right? So slowly I'm learning to do that for myself and others, not just grace, but grace upon that grace.
When I read this, I was like, wow, to find out that grace requires nothing of me is exactly what her whole message is about, is that you are worthy of love because you are worthy of love. Like, you don't need to be anything in particular. And like, I like tearing up already just thinking of that, like just how much this stanza like hits is like, I'm still learning that. Like I now like it's like a daily affirmation thing that like, no, you don't have to be anything in particular to be loved.
Like, perfection isn't everything, and you can kind of work your whole life for it and it still not happen. I don't ever give myself time to like relax and realize that like it's not going to be perfect, and everything that I do isn't always going to work out even though I want it to. So I feel like that part is what I guess kind of sticks out to me, because I don't know if I'm working through this enough to be at the grace point yet, if that makes sense.
What is something that you wish in general people understood better about your type, and like how can you relate that to being a better sister for everybody else that's watching who's not a type 1?
Being specific and constructive with feedback, being direct but encouraging.
Just being direct and being upfront about stuff and not kind of like beating around the bush. I'm a very direct person, so if I have like an issue with something, I go straight to people about it instead of like pondering over it, because if I like think about it, or like if I think someone's talking, or if I think someone thinks I did a bad job, then I'm going to overthink it way more than I would if they would just directly tell it to me.
The misunderstood part, I would say, is one part is that we are rule followers, but we decide what the rules are. Type 1s decide what rules we're following, not the whole world is following, but what we follow. So that doesn't mean that we're gonna like not have your back.
I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with me tonight and giving me some perspective into what it means to be a 1. I know that other sisters will really appreciate it. I hope you have a great night. And yeah, let's make a group chat or something, you guys. This is fun. Thank you so much for checking out this video in the Sigma Kappa Enneagram video series. If you want to learn more about the other types or about the Enneagram in general, make sure to check out the other videos. Bye.